I'll tell you what. One thing I don't believe, and this is a recent development for me within the last year or two. Wilt Chamberlain, 100 points, 1962, 100 points in one game. I don't think it happened. I'll just put it out on the table. I don't think it happened.
This is a growing belief upon people of roughly our age.
Yeah, very much a TikTok generation thing,
And
of which I don't even have the app. But
yeah, I don't think he did it either.
It fits a little too nicely for me. 100 points in the game.
Too clean. Maybe if it was 102, 101. Then
And no footage of it. None. 1/4 of a radio broadcast.
Not even the full quarter.
they came out 20 years later, right?
Yeah, 26 years later, 1988 was when the audio came out for it. Zach, I don't think he did it.
Okay.
I know you're a big Wilt truther here, and I do love dunking on Wilt in Wilt's career.
No, that's
quarter century after he died.
I was always out of the two. I was always a Bill Russell guy. So
Russell's better.
yeah, I believe so too.
More valuable. Yeah.
My favorite NBA player, which used to rub people the wrong way because they said it couldn't be because I never watched him play, but I argue that all the time. Anyway,
that's a good point. I can argue that for just about any sport.
Yeah.
Like Bobby Orr's my favorite hockey player.
I don't
Retired
think
20
that
years before I was.
I don't think I necessarily have to watch them play to admire how they played or enjoy them as a player.
Yeah,
but
yeah, brother.
anyway, yeah. See, I just got done reading, and I just brought it up though of where it was points of where Frank McGuire, who was the Philadelphia coach at the time, was putting in backups to purposely foul the Knicks at the time to make sure to get the ball back into Wilt's hands. Could I see it being a weird spectacle like that of like, we're not playing basketball, we're just like hacking people to get the ball back for him to score that amount of points?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. I don't think that this was like an up and up, just like, it was a dominant performance to be able to put up that many points, but it would have been weird if against Toronto, like the Lakers were like, just hacking them all the time to get the ball back to Kobe when he scored 81.
I just think
I get that part.
There's enough of an environment for this to not be 100% true. This is like a 12 Angry Men type shit.
Such a great movie, though.
It was 60 years ago. There were television cameras. It's not like they were on national TV all the time or anything, but there were local broadcasts. And there's no footage of it. It was being played in Hershey, Pennsylvania, because that's what they used to do in the early days of the NBA. They'd do like these random. The Celtics played in Hartford a couple games a year until like 25 years ago.
Rockets played exhibition games at the Farrell Center back in the day. I think like in the 80s, yeah, like the Rockets and Lakers randomly played at the event center, the extra event center.
Oh.
Yeah, so like that stuff happened.
Yeah.
There was 4,000 people at the game. I don't think they had a video board with all the, the scoring and foul totals on there. So my theory is Wilt Chamberlain scored a lot of points in that game. Okay. He might well have scored 80. He scored 70 a couple of times, like 4 or 5 times. He probably scored a ton of points. And it's 1962. The NBA needs something. They really need something. So wouldn't it be convenient if the best player in the league had 100 points in a game? Because, we've seen the 75. Who gives a shit about that? 100, that's a number. It's like Justin Timberlake in that scene from The Social Network. It's better than $1 million? $1 billion. So I just think there's some funny stuff going on. I think Wilt scored a lot, and it got, word got around the arena of, when he was actually at 70, he's at 90.
So
he's going to get there.
In theory, then, just to try to paint this picture.
Let's do it.
Old school, like, think Hoosiers, high school gym scoreboard where it probably just has home visitor, maybe fouls.
Analog clock going around.
Yeah, and the clock, and then maybe, like, what quarter it is. That's about it. You're not getting anything more than that. That's all you know as a fan.
Shot clock's on the floor.
So you think, granted, we've talked about it a little off air, and I will agree with you, like, stat keeping around that time in the NBA, because there's a book I read about the ABA kind of around the same time and stuff too, of just how things were kept, or when that started and stuff, and it just wasn't paid attention to as much. But they maybe had probably a scorekeeper. Sure, I would think still.
We didn't have like obsolete great bookkeeping and any sport outside of baseball until like the late 60s, early 70s.
Exactly.
Like 100% certain.
So-
But yes, of course, you'd still have a scorekeeper and a clock
So
manager.
probably the guys at the score in this scenario, the guys at the scoring table just being like, man, Wilt's at 76, and either somebody behind him misheard, or they're just like, how many does Wilt have? 86, right? And they're just passing
Yeah.
around to hype the crowd
Could
up.
happen.
Wilt's
you count
too-
it one quarter twice. Something
Wilt's
like that.
too caught up in the game because he's obviously trying to think of, I'm just scoring a bunch of points. I would think that
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I feel like Kobe knew every 81 that he had. So I would
Sure.
think that some people
I'll say
have
this.
that in them.
This could be an argument against me here. No one wanted to score 100 points more than Wilt Chamberlain did. More than the NBA. He didn't give a shit if his team won or not.
Mm-hmm.
If he had the chance to score 100, he wanted to be out there and score 100. I don't think you can match all that up in your head, but like the Kobe thing, once he was aware, he was aware.
Mm-hmm.
He also there's a couple more things in here.
Okay.
He was 28 of 32 from the free throw line.
I get
Look,
that.
look. Okay, Wilt, a career 51% free throw shooter for his career. Like, historically terrible. Like, one of the great marks against him in his career was that he didn't want the ball at the end of games because he was afraid of getting fouled and being embarrassed at the free throw line. That guy just went 28 of 32.
Actually, in the 61-62 season, he had a 61.3% free throw percentage. So he got worse later in his career.
61%.
So he was.
Whoa.
I would argue he was a better free throw percentage or a better free throw shooter earlier in his career too.
And he just shot 90% in this game.
Well, I mean, you got to have highs and lows to get to 60, right?
And by
So
the way,
had
he
a
was
90
good
game,
early in
had
his
a 30
career
game.
because it was before they changed the rule. Because he would put his arm halfway to the basket and then shoot it. They literally changed that rule because of him.
Yeah.
And just in the middle of this, he shoots, whatever, 88,
Shoots a
90%,
90.
whatever it is. I don't believe that. I don't believe that he did that. It all makes too much perfect conspiracy theory sense.
Well,
Struggling time for the NBA. Barely anybody in the arena. Not a lot of bookkeeping. Zero video at all. Barely any audio. And in that audio, by the way, the announcer gets the score wrong twice. Score wrong twice from what we saw in the official records of the game. So, maybe they could have slipped up somewhere else, like saying Wilt had 100 points.
And no one in the arena remembered how he scored 100 points, like got his 100 point either.
That's a great point, Braden.
that was, yeah.
Nobody knows. None of the players or the fans. They're like, oh, was it a dunk? I thought it was a fadeaway
layup.
bank shot.
I get maybe if you don't know
up and under?
what point 92 was or something like that, like sure. But the defining one,
You should know.
like if it was a dunk, you'd be like exclamation point, like yeah, I get that. Or if it, so I get that too. I would also argue, and I thought this when we watched some videos before we started this segment. And one of them was that Brett Musburger, like the one obviously made in like the 80s or 70s, but it was Wilt talking himself. And like listening to him, there is a part of Wilt Chamberlain when listening to him talk that makes me think of like a professional wrestler, of like him selling himself, obviously. Yeah.
And the showbiz that he went into after
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Like, again, nobody was more
Wilt said
into
himself,
their own personal brand than Wilt Chamberlain.
Wilt said himself that in high school, he was 80% from the free throw line. But that's Wilt himself.
The same thing.
Because
Put
then
the arm out.
obviously the stats say that he was more like 62% in college and 58 in the pros. So if you have a guy...
Wilt stretching the truth a little bit, for his personal brand. Boy, wouldn't it be cool if I was the only person in NBA history with 100 points in a game? Elgin Baylor had 71. I had a couple 70s. But you know what would be really cool is if I had fucking 100.
They do have, oddly enough, there's a Philadelphia Inquiry story. It's a Philadelphia Inquirer story
You got it. Yeah.
from 1991 that listed 6 reasons theories given by Chamberlain over the years for his poor free throw shooting. They were an arthritic knees, too much English on his shot, like he's playing pool, that he was too tall, which ruined his shooting arc, Lifting weights made him too strong. His hands were too big, and it was all in his head.
You know what I love about that more than just that thought of a 50-something-year-old man doing that for himself was that when you think of Wilt Chamberlain and you think of the downsides of Wilt Chamberlain, the first thing you think of is not his free throw percentage. What do you think of?
100 points?
No, like the downsides. He was
Who
a
he
loser.
played against?
He was a loser. He lost all the time.
Yeah, but
Won
that wasn't
2 championships. He
of
always
him,
lost
though.
to Russell. Is it? Because
I mean, the one with him and Russell. Well, they shouldn't have put balloons up in the
that was one of them. He lost to him every year, man.
Yeah.
And look, Wilt is an all-time great player, especially if you look at the stats, and especially if you ignore making your team better. Like there is nobody more selfish in the annals of NBA history that was a star like that than Wilt Chamberlain. So I think it's so funny that instead of using the twilight of his life, it ended up being he died in 99, of defending why he wasn't a loser, why you can't brand him like that. He instead is like, you know why I sucked so bad at the free throw line? I was too strong.
tall.
I was too good, man.
Oh, here's
I
another
was really
thing.
too strong.
So I brought up the 61%.
I used to shit on Kareem because Kareem wasn't a good enough rebounder, which I think is hilarious. He was just a hater, man, for forever.
It's from a Sports Illustrated article. This is like 4 years ago, the Reddit page, though. It was, today I learned that Wilt Chamberlain, the year that included the 100-point game where he was
62, average 50 and 25.
He got better because he was shooting underhanded between his legs. However, he abandoned that form immediately the following year because he felt like a sissy and never
looked
shot
stupid. Yep.
as well from the free throw line again. So
Perfect. That is perfect Wilt, man.
So
That might help your argument a little bit, but that is perfect Wilt.
I'm just saying. So he was, for that year, a better free throw shooter, but he abandoned it because of the way it looked. Which is the same thing that apparently, like Shaq, like I think somebody tried to get Shaq to, and Shaq's like, nah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, that's why the Sohan thing is at least impressive that he's still willing to do.
Yeah.
One hand. But it's also, to go against my own point, to make it more believable, the early 60s NBA was an unbelievable scoring environment, like the likes of which we do not know today. Even in the height of the Steph Curry era, the offense was not like this. The amount of shots being put up per minute were incredible. That's why Wilt averages 50 and 25.
I mean, he's also playing like Jim Bob from the hardware store.
Okay, I don't like that argument either.
Why not?
Because, so there's less teams in the league.
Okay.
The talent isn't any different. That means there's more Hall of Famers per team.
Because there was no one else
Wilt
playing.
was the best. Wilt was the best athlete, for sure.
Okay.
But, like, we say that, and it's like, oh, well, they were playing against plumbers and firemen. Well, okay, if everyone were plumbers and firemen, then what's the difference? That's, like, my immediate poking hole into this.
Okay.
Not aside from the fact that there was just more talent per team than there is now, because now there are
it's more specialized,
watered down teams that are tanking the whole season. Yes, so it's more specialized. So it's like, okay, well, you'll say the same thing about the 80s, and in 30 years, you'll say the same thing about now. You'll say, Alperen Sengun, man, that guy wasn't a fucking athlete. Big Baby Davis, how does that guy play center for a couple games? Braden with the TikTok argument, with the JJ Redick argument.
Yeah. No, I do hate that because, again, it's the best. Like, the people who weren't going to try to play professional basketball at the time weren't obviously still going to try to play in the NBA. And it's the best of the people who wanted to play at that time. Like, it's the best of what you had.
It was the highest level. And we said this with the Larry Bird segment we did a month ago or so. It's like, if those guys had the dietitians that we have now and the workout plans that we have now and the ability to be a basketball player year-round, because they didn't have that back then. Wilt did, but not a lot of players did. Then they probably would have looked like better athletes. It would have looked better on TV.
Now, I think that there's arguments.
Jim Bob.
That there's arguments, obviously, once if you bring in, like, certain barriers at the sports when they weren't allowing certain players in, like, of course, you can argue
maybe
that
a different
one.
argument you can have. Sure.
That is 100% accurate.
Anything specific on that one?
Huh?
Anything specific there?
Well, I'm thinking of baseball.
Yeah, they did. And, I mean, even the early days of the NBA, the early days of the NFL, when they weren't allowing black players to play, that's, I think, even a different argument. Yeah. I can hear that out.
But I think that it's not like once it's open to everybody, it's not then a thing of like it being less talented there, that it was the best talent of what you had there at the time. I think with more people getting into it and thinking, oh, I want to make a career out of that and becoming more specialized. And like we talked, like you talked about with preparing in so many different ways, we have so much better athletes today where even like guys off the bench just in general are better and more well-trained than some of the stars were back in the day just because of how specialized some of it is.
I mean, we just talked about Willie Mays yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Still one of the greats ever. Not willing to change that. The guys didn't throw as hard back then. They were also swinging ash bats for a long time. These things even out, Braden. I'm telling you. And to back to this Wilt point, the not scoring 100 points. Let me ask you guys this question. 1932 World Series, Babe Ruth calls a shot. Did that happen?
I'd like for it to, but I don't think
Yeah,
it
as
did.
I was to say, it probably didn't, but it's fun to think that it did.
Right. Same thing, man. No, obviously no video. That's before video, so that's more of a pass, but nothing really about it on the audio, on the radio call. No one in the ballpark can say for sure where he pointed to or if he was pointing to, right center or left center or pointing at the pitcher or just saying something to the pitcher, Charlie Root. Nobody knows. There's all these different explanations, but then he hits a home run to dead center. That becomes the story.
It was in they put it in the Babe movie, I remember, but
of course they did. Yeah.
I feel like it's just been a story for a long time.
Where did it originate? Did Babe say it first, or did
Babe say? Well, I'm sure some sports writer put it out there, and Babe thought, "Ooh, that's a good story," because he did have a speech about it in later years. He said, "I'll never forget the day at Wrigley Field I called my shot," and it's like, yeah, that fits pretty nicely now, which kind of brings to my point of. And Pat McAfee made this exact point. So you always know I'm trying to be Pat McAfee. Sometimes back in the day, journalists just made shit up. I know that's wild to think about because in no way today do journalists just make shit up. But yes, especially sports writing, dude, sensationally, yes, they would make shit up. So anything that comes with a tall tale story. I believe the Ray Chapman thing because Ray Chapman got hit by a pitch and then died in the hospital. Like that I believe. But the called shot, I doubt it. Well, I really doubt it, man. In fact, that one I'm almost convinced just did not happen. He was probably just talking to the pitcher. Because they did that shit all the time. Man.
And here's the thing, and this is going to argue.
Honestly, I'll raise up some concerns over Georgia Tech beating Cumberland College 222-0.
Well, yeah, but see, so
that
that's
seems
the thing.
impossible, even with the context that we know about it.
I have
they were actually playing against plumbers and bartenders. That's real. That was real.
So I mean, I have two things, but so I guess then obviously we have to look at everything before a certain point then of just being like
take it with a grain of salt. Yeah.
But another point then...
Again, like Babe Ruth hitting that home run that's well documented.
Yeah.
But the calling the shot, don't know about that.
But so like all this...
Or relaying a message to Bobby Thompson for Ralph Branco what pitch was coming could well have happened, but there's no hard evidence of it at all, no even hard corroboration of it.
Yeah, I guess we don't know for sure if Shoeless Joe Jackson actually threw this gamers or not.
Good point. Yeah, we don't know that.
I mean, he says he didn't. Like, he says that he had to change your heart midway through. Like, that's all we have to go. Like, I get that. Like, there's not a lot of documentation on stuff. I get what you're saying. And the other thing that I'm about to say, and I'm not saying that I've come around to it, but you bringing up the showman fact and even the fact that Babe Ruth brought it up in speeches. We have one of the Sports Illustrated posters of Hulk Hogan, who I despise. But the reason I bring him up because sometimes I think very much you get lost into your own character or this larger life athlete that you build. And the things that he believes about himself that he said that are absolutely ridiculous, that there is no truth to being, believable whatsoever, I think you just believe your character too much. So could the Babe have... Over the time, he hit a lot of home runs, 714 of them.
Yeah.
Right? Could he have not have thought and been like, you know what? Yeah. I did at one point in time sit there. I remember sitting there pointing and calling it. He might believe that then. Wilt put up a lot of points, and there's a very good chance that he could have scored 100, or he could have maybe only got like 88 and thought to himself that I did get 100.
And honestly,
I
I'm
hate
thinking,
that I'm coming around on this, but
I'm thinking Wilt might have exaggerated something else too. I think it might have only been like 17,500 women. 20,000 just seems like an unbelievable number to me.
well, that was an
So I think all those things come together of the time where the NBA needed a bit of pub, perfect setting, perfect player for this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting it at 86 points, which is still pretty good. That would still be the record, by the way.
Yeah.
But I just don't think he got to 100. Nope. Don't think so. We don't have hard evidence. And we also, like I mentioned with the called shot, we also don't have hard corroboration. That's the other thing. The witnesses of it still don't know how it was decided, what the score was, all this kind of shit.
That picture that we all know, too, is a fan picture. It's not even taken by
a team.
No, it was, hey, hold this.
Hold this up and
The
smile.
more we go into it, the more I'm thinking he didn't even score 30.
Well, I
40.
mean,
Like, I think they might have just counted like a first half twice. Anyway, Wilt 100, no chance. 20,000, maybe.
We are Rogue Media Sports.